Hello, happy holidays, and welcome to Book versus Movie, a podcast where we read books that have been adapted into movies, and then we try to decide which we like better, the book or the movie. I am Margot P. of the Chingona Homesteader, and this is my good friend and co-host Margot D. of Brooklyn Fitchick.
Hi, everyone.
So before we get into this is a replay, but we have a little fun stuff before we start the show. First of all, if you haven't already joined our Facebook group, what are you waiting for?
There's so much fun there, Margot. That's where we're really interacting with people. So you just go to Facebook and you like the basic Facebook page. That's totally fine because we put all of our episodes there. But if you ask to join the Facebook group and it's just type in Book VS Movie Podcast Group, ask to join, I will accept you in. And Margot and I, we just go on there and we do polls and we put videos up there. And we just like all this ancillary materials to what we're working on. And we also ask for suggestions there. So if you guys are really interested, please join the group. We'd love to see you there.
And another great way you can make suggestions on books and movies that you would like us to cover is by giving us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts.
Thank you. Yes, please. If you like the show, please leave a few stars. That's fantastic. If you have time to leave a review, that would be great. And some people, they just say, hey, I like the show. Why don't you cover this, this, and this? And it's a totally fine way to reach out to us. And we will read all of the 5-star reviews on the air. But wherever you get your podcast, just be sure to subscribe. And that way you'll never miss an episode.
And you can also follow us now on Instagram.
On Instagram at Book versus Movie, on Twitter at Book versus Movie. If you want to send us an email, you just want to be more private with your communication with us, email is fine, book versus movie podcast at gmail.com. And by the way, we have a stack of stickers here. If you guys want some Book versus Movie stickers, be sure to email us or wherever you want to get in touch with us, and I will put them in the mail for you right away.
Now, today's episode is a holiday replay.
Yes. We are replaying A Christmas Carol. We talked about this last year. I absolutely love this episode. I think it's completely fun and hilarious at times. We have a little clip from Drunk History in here. We're talking about Charles Dickens. We're talking about the Jim Carey movie, and we're pairing that with the Dickens book. So Margo and I, by the way, we went through a lot of different versions of A Christmas Carol. We wanted to figure out the best ones to compare it to for you guys. Not everything's easily available, and so Margo and I, we try to make sure that it's something you can stream pretty easily. So we decided to do that one just because neither one of us had seen it before. But today, for the pre-show, Margo and I tasked her, and she said, yeah, let's do it. We're going to pick our top 5 favorite Scrooges. So Margo and I, we're going to go back and forth. We'll start with number 5, my number 5, her number 5, and then back and forth. And Margo, I understand you were up late last night watching some Christmas carols.
Oh, many. Yep. And they all have their charms.
Mm-hmm.
So my number 5, I'm going to start with my number 5 is... as far as I know, there's 2 Christmas Carol versions with a female lead. One is the Vanessa Williams one, which is not my favorite. I prefer Susan Lucci. I like the Susan Lucci where she's Ebby. She's Ebby Scrooge, who owns like a department store. Just because I love Susan Lucci. That woman can do anything. So that's my number 5, Susan Lucci. It was a Lifetime movie, I believe.
Yes.
Easy to find. What's yours?
Okay, funny you say that, Margo. By the way, we didn't tell each other we were going to pick. My number 5 is Vanessa Williams, Ebony Scrooge, Diva's Christmas Carol, which is a VH1 movie in 2000, and I try to catch it every year if I can. It gets tougher and tougher. It used to be on all the time, but I love Vanessa Williams. I love her as Ebony. Ebony is such a meanie. All these Scrooges that we're picking, we're trying to pick from the basic story of A Christmas Carol. So sometimes it's a little bit of a left turn, and this is an R&B version of it. But I love Vanessa Williams. She is such a total meanie, and then when she comes around, it really does mean something. I think it's got cheesy costumes and cheesy songs. It's got Kathy Griffin. It's just got and it's just John Taylor from Duran Duran. He's in there.
I forgot.
And Chili from TLC.
Chili, I remember Chili was in it, but I forgot about which one from Duran Duran?
John Taylor, the bassist.
John. Yeah.
The most handsome one.
I agree.
Yeah. So
Yep.
I love this
That's
movie.
hilarious.
It's cheesy for sure. The special effects are not that great, but it has that 3 acts that we like for the story. And so that's my number 5, Vanessa Williams as Ebony Scrooge.
That's amazing. Now, I watched a lot of half-hour sitcom versions, and so what I noticed, now that I'm a connoisseur of the genre, very often for time they cut the 3 acts into 2 acts. There's 3 ghosts into 2 ghosts, or sometimes even just 1 ghost. But so for time, which I understand. But given that, I think there's some good TV sitcom Christmas carols out there. So my number 4 Scrooge is Red Fox as Fred G. Sanford on Sanford and Son.
What year is this? Do you know?
Yeah, and Damon Wilson, who plays his son on the show, Lamont, he plays all the ghosts. It is very funny. I think a lot of it holds up. It's not the biggest budget show that ever was. Like, there's a whole scene that takes place. You remember Aunt Esther?
Of course.
Okay, so there's this whole scene that takes place, like when they go to Christmas Present. They're in Aunt Esther's home, which is beautifully decorated, but windowless. No windows, because they're all like stage flats. But my reason for choosing that one more than anything is at the end of the show, they do this sort of epilogue, and Red Fox. There's a guy who's a guest, a quote unquote guest at the Christmas party, and he's this amazing jazz guitarist. And so Red Fox sings a Christmas song at Chestnuts Roasting on an Open Fire. It's this beautiful rendition of a Christmas song just tacked on at the end, and it's just amazing. Just for that alone, that's my number 4.
And what is this, mid-70s?
Yes, I believe it's actually, I think it's 1970. It's like 73.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's early. It's early Sanford and Son.
That is hilarious. Okay, I'm going to definitely check that out. So my number 4, it's a movie that's celebrating its 30th anniversary. I can hardly believe it, but yes, it's been 30 years since Scrooged. And
oh, yeah.
And Bill Murray as Frank Cross, who runs a cable network, and they're putting on this very cheesy show on Christmas Eve to air at midnight. There's solid gold dancers. He's got Karen Allen in there. There's a scene where Frank talks about stapling a set of antlers to a mouse to simulate reindeer. This movie is so weird and twisted and very, very dark sometimes. I mean, Frank Cross is a total bastard, but it's being Bill Murray, so you kind of like him too, and he's so enjoyable. His brothers are in there. Buster Poindexter is in there as the dead taxi driver who's the ghost of Christmas Past. I love this movie. It's weird. There's some weird stuff in there, but I think it holds up. I love the ending of it when everyone's singing "Put a Little Love in Your Heart." I kind of go for all of it. So that's my number 4, Bill Murray, Frank Cross, Scrooged.
That is a great one. I agree. That is a really good one, and it was not on my list. So my number 3 is, if you ever wondered what would happen if Neil Simon told the story of A Christmas Carol, it would be, of course, Scrooge Gets an Oscar, an episode from The Odd Couple.
I never seen this.
The Odd Couple, it's the very first season of The Odd Couple. First of all, I love The Odd Couple so much.
Me too.
I love that show. And I especially love the early seasons where Neil Simon was more involved, number 1, and number 2, where they live in an actual New York apartment. It actually looks like it doesn't look like a stage set in Hollywood. It looks like a real New York apartment. And so it's in that very first season. Felix is directing a production of The Christmas Carol for the police officer's name, Murray. For Murray's charity that he does as a police officer. And everybody wants Oscar to be Scrooge, and he refuses, and he gets so angry that he kicks Felix out of the apartment. But because he has such a deplorable diet and eats such awful spicy food, he has this terrible nightmare, and it's A Christmas Carol. And it's amazing. And it's so funny. It's very, very funny and very clever. And yes, very Neil Simon. Neil Simon does Charles Dickens. That's my number 3.
You got to love Neil Simon.
Yeah.
And that first season, they didn't have a studio audience, so it had a whole other different flavor. I totally agree with you.
Exactly. Yeah. I love the whole series, but I have a real soft spot for those early ones.
Good choice. So my number 3, it's a little basic, but I honestly, to be honest, I wasn't raised with this movie, and I think a lot of people were. So he's their only Scrooge they think about, and that's what Dina said in her Facebook group. But it's Alistair Sim, and it's A Christmas Carol from 1951. And I watched it last night for the first time since last year when I was prepping for the show. And he's a great Scrooge, and he plays all the different levels of Scrooge really well. The whole backstory of Scrooge, that his sister dies. There's a whole scene where his sister dies, and he promises to take care of her son. It's heartbreaking, and because he doesn't do it. But the special effects are actually kind of pretty good for 1951. Yeah. There's brilliant acting. They're all English actors. And it's only like an hour and 26 minutes. I love the ending. He is considered for a lot of people the only Scrooge, Ebenezer, that they will consider. And so he's not my number 1 because I only started watching him a couple of years ago. But number 3, Alistair Sim.
Yeah, that for me was a definitive Scrooge because I know that's the one they used to play on KTLA every holiday season. So if you grew up in Southern California, in the latter half of the 20th century, oh my gosh, we're so old. Then you almost certainly had KTLA, which was a local station out of Los Angeles. And one of the things that was so wonderful about KTLA is it would play old Hollywood movies. I don't know what they must have had some kind of relationship with the studio archives or something. And so they would play that version every Christmas. So for me, that is what I think of immediately when I think of Scrooge. But it's not on my list. Number 2, because I tried to go with the television theme for mine. I stuck to TV and made for TV.
Okay.
So my number 2 is one I completely forgot about, but loved at the time, and I feel like it really holds up. A more contemporary Scrooge, Alex P. Keaton from Family Ties. It's very funny. It's still extremely well written. The jokes still hold up. The acting is very good. I really, really loved it. It made me laugh. It actually made me laugh. And it's a great story. And I love it too because the dad works in public television. And now I also work in public broadcasting, so I could relate. But I didn't realize before, but they have like swag from the PBS, could do for giveaways for pledge drives. They have it like all over the house, kind of just placed around the house. But anyway, it's a great, funny. You can find it easily online, and I forget what it's called though. But it's easy to find, and it's also I think it's also the first or second season of Family Ties.
I loved that show so much. My sister and I watched it every week, and I can't tell you guys how famous Michael J. Fox was for a while there.
It was ridiculous.
Ridiculous. He did movies and television, and he was great at both. He's such a unique talent, like what he's good at. And he was so funny on that. I loved that show. I thought it was hilarious, and I think that's such a good choice. And by the way, Justine Bateman has a new book out about fame and about her time being famous. It's really good if you guys are looking for a book.
She's super smart.
Oh, she's brilliant. So that was your number 2?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so my number 2, it's a TV movie. And I mentioned this on the Dorking Out show, but this is one of my favorites of all time. It's 1979, Henry Winkler, An American Christmas Carol.
Oh, I love that one. Underrated.
Completely underrated. But you guys, you go to YouTube, you can find it in HD. So I think there's been enough of us over the years, like we grew up and then took over the internet, and just it's like this movie has to exist because it's brilliant. He plays Benedict Slade, and it takes place in the early part of the 20th century. So it's around 1931 where he's an old man. So it just shows him younger, and Henry Winkler is probably the age that he's playing in the movie.
Right. Yeah, he's aged up a bit.
But he's so, and he was the Fonz, by the way. This is 1979, and the Fonz was a beloved character on Happy Days. Everyone loved the Fonz. He was awesome. So for him to play a real bastard and a real meanie was a big deal, to see him that way. But the flashback sequences are really good. The other actors are great. It's beautifully filmed. They have a scene with the ghost of future is a guy from the 70s, and he has like a disco shirt on, and it's and the last, like when he comes around and then he has to visit Bob Cratchit and tries to make up with the wife and stuff like that, I still cry because he really takes the presents that you'll see for yourself. I still cry, like the way that the mother reacts because he's taking care of little Tim, and you guys just know the story. It's really good. It's on YouTube. Like I said, there's an HD version, hour and a half, An American Christmas Carol with Henry Winkler as Benedict Slade.
That's amazing. I do love that one.
It's beautiful.
That's a great one. I'm so glad it's so easy to find too. That might be the one I watched with my kids this holiday season. Now, my number one, I had no question at all what I was going to choose for my number one Scrooge. One of the greatest characters of all time already, did a Christmas Carol special, and it is Edmund Blackadder from Blackadder, of course. They did a Christmas Carol. Only the twist is he starts out good. He's already good. He's a good, sweet, kind, generous guy. And the ghosts come and show him like what becomes of the good, sweet, kind, generous guy. And what happens is that everybody takes advantage of him. And so he decides to turn evil at the end. It is brilliant.
Oh, that is so funny. Oh, that's great. Is that available on YouTube or something? Where'd you see it?
Where did I get it? I think I got it on Amazon.
Okay, I'll go look for that.
You can get Blackadder everywhere. You can find it on YouTube. I've definitely seen it on YouTube. You can get it on Netflix, and you can get it on Amazon.
That is brilliant. Okay, so my number one, and I'm sure I mentioned it in our episode today, by the way, the replay, because it is my favorite of all time. It's Sir Patrick Stewart, excuse me. TNT did a version of A Christmas Carol in 1999 that's very, very close to the book, by the way, almost like directly page for page. You could follow it. Dominic West is here as the nephew. Richard E. Grant, and it's a great cast. It feels so authentic. Like, for example, Richard E. Grant as a Cratchit, he has like yellow teeth. Like, yeah. they like look poor and of that time.
It's Victorian teeth.
Very Victorian English teeth. But that adds to the realism because it drives you crazy. I don't know about you, but sometimes when you watch a period piece, and then nowadays, especially when people have these veneers, you can see,
and everybody's tan
with veneers and extensions, and you're like, wait, what? It's crazy. It's a beautiful cast. It's a wonderful cast. It's beautifully filmed. At the very end, he performs this on stage many, many times over the years, so he has the character down. So when Stewart comes around and he becomes this wonderful guy as Ebenezer and giving the presents to people and all that stuff, it really feels earned. And you, especially the scene where he laughs. There's a scene where he laughs for the first time. Ebenezer laughs for the first time in probably decades, and you just feel the joy like looking on his face. And I watch this every year. You have to buy it. It's not on YouTube to stream. So if you are looking for one to own, I would definitely recommend it. It's my absolute favorite version. And I watch a whole bunch of them. And last night I watched a whole bunch more, but that's my number one, Patrick Stewart.
Yay!
So let me say just for the Facebook group, because we put it out to you guys, we had a lot for Mr. Magoo.
Right. That is a good one.
Yeah, that's Jim Backus. That was a 1962 special. We had, I wrote out here, Scrooge McDuck. We had a few for Scrooge McDuck.
Well, yeah.
We had
another classic.
We had a few people very passionate about the George C. Scott one, which is from 1984.
Also good.
Very good. And then we got quite a few for A Muppet Christmas Carol. And that's where Michael Caine, and that is a really wonderful one. I would just say they dyed his eyebrows, which is really distracting. We're going to replay. This is, like I said, we aired this last year at this time. Here we go. A Christmas Carol, our replay.
Marley was dead. To begin with, there is no doubt whatever about that. The register of his burial was signed by the clerk, the clergyman, the undertaker, the chief mourner. Scrooge signed it. Old Marley was dead as a doornail. Scrooge knew he was dead. Of course he did. How could it be otherwise? Scrooge and he were partners for I don't know how many years, though Scrooge never painted out old Marley's name. There it stood years afterwards above the warehouse door, Scrooge and Marley. Sometimes people new to the business called Scrooge Scrooge, and sometimes Marley, but he answered to both names. It was all the same to him. Oh, but he was a tight-fisted hand at the grindstone, Scrooge. A squeezing, wrenching, grasping, scraping, clutching, covetous old sinner. Hard and sharp as flint, from which no steel had ever struck generous fire, secret and self-contained and solitary as an oyster.
Hello and welcome back to a very special holiday edition of Book versus Movie. This is a podcast where we read books that have been adapted into movies, and then my friend and I try to decide which we like better, the book or the movie. I am Margot P. of the Chingona Homesteader, and on the line is my good friend and co-host, Margot D. of Brooklyn Fit Chick.
Hello, everyone. Merry Christmas.
Now, we have a lot of stuff we're going to talk about today, but before we get to that, we have a couple new reviews.
We certainly do, Margot. So we love these reviews. You guys have been really showing up for that. Thank you so much. iTunes counts downloads as well as reviews. So the more reviews we get, the better placement we get in their store. And they're always rejiggering how they do things there. It's really annoying. So if you like the show, please subscribe. But if you love the show and you want to leave a review, we're going to read all the 5-star reviews on the show, especially from Apple Podcasts. And we do have two today, Margo. One's really, really quick. It's from Johnny Dix 155 from the USA. Smart conversation with two people who feel like friends. So thank you, Johnny. And the other one is Jason Fordham. So dudes are showing up today.
Oh, nice.
All right. I stumbled upon this podcast after listening to Margot D on F This Movie, talking about Love Actually. Since discovering, I have devoured 5 episodes during my workday. I just find the comparisons of books and films fascinating, understanding the differences and where the director and writer took dramatic license and vice versa. Keep it up. So those are our reviews. So thank you so much for doing that.
Thank you. Those were really nice.
They were.
Yeah, that was a great episode, by the way, of F This Movie. I really liked that too.
Oh,
I thought it was great.
Thank you.
And then we also want to mention that we are members of the Electronic Media Collective.
Yes, we are. And they have like 50 podcasts now, Margot. They've been growing by leaps and bounds. So if you're looking for new podcasts, great place to go. It's the Electronic Media Collective. And we also follow the hashtags Podern Family and Lady Pod Squad. So on Twitter, that is. So if you're looking for new podcasts, there you go.
And there was one other thing.
Well, we have the Facebook group we wanted to mention.
Oh, yes. We forgot to mention this last time. We now have not just the page. We've had the page for a long time, but we also now have a Facebook group.
And it's just a little like a closed place where we can all kind of chill out and hang out together. So if you want to join, just go to Facebook. And we do have the Facebook page and we still post there. So don't lose that. But if you type into the search Book VS Movie Podcast Group, I'm in charge of the group. I'll let you join in. And we do fun things like we have polls. And today, Margot, we have a poll about what's your favorite Scrooge movie. So we'll talk about that in a minute. But that's Book VS Movie Podcast Group. I hope you guys join.
And for those of you who have been in the group, thank you for joining.
Yes.
And I hope it's been Margot has been so fantastic about scrounging up every possible version of today's book and movie. There's so many that I completely forgot about. It's been so fun to go, oh yeah, that one and that one. Yeah, it's been fun.
And we are, by the way, Margot, we're on Spotify now. If you guys have Spotify, you can listen to Book versus Movie. And I didn't even know this. I've had an Alexa since my birthday this past March. If you use the TuneIn app on Alexa, you can listen to our show over Alexa, which is just so freaking cool. I just felt like we made it in that moment when I found that out. I got super excited. Yes. So we're everywhere.
Yes, you could say, Alexa, tell me what temperature it is outside and play me Book versus movie, The Exorcist.
And it will. It's so great. And so you can find us on social media. It's a great place to reach us, Facebook and Twitter. It's at Book versus Movie. You just spell those out. We have our email is bookversusmoviepodcast@gmail.com. And if you just found us by accident, you want to subscribe to the show in whatever format you subscribe in, it's Book vs Movie Podcast. And yes, we're both named Margot if this is all new to you. I'm Margot D and she's Margot P.
And today's book and movie is, I can't believe we haven't done this before, but we are doing A Christmas Carol.
We are. And Margot, this is perfect for us because, well, one thing is we're also brought to you by Audible. And you guys, for you listeners of Book vs. Movie Podcast, Audible is offering a free audiobook download with a free 30-day trial to give you the opportunity to check out their service. And you guys, Patrick Stewart reads A Christmas Carol in Audible. And it is so fantastic. So
it is really good.
Oh, it's fantastic. It's wonderful. So if you want to try this service for free, boom, there you go. Get the Patrick Stewart version of A Christmas Carol. So that's my recommendation for this week. And you just go to audibletrial.com/book versus movie. Again, that's audibletrial.com/book versus movie. And yes, Margot, we're finally talking about A Christmas Carol.
Yay. And yeah, just, well, not all of the books that we do or that we've done, I would say, are fabulous when read aloud.
No.
But this is definitely one of them. And we'll talk about that a little bit. But yeah, we're finally doing A Christmas Carol. I don't think we've ever done any Dickens, have we?
No, this is going to be the first.
Fantastic. And I hadn't read A Christmas Carol, gosh, since probably high school. It's been ages.
Yeah.
And I feel really bad. I should be reading it like every year. It's amazing.
It was a wonderful read. I was really shocked by how much I enjoyed it. And it's not a long read, you guys. You can do it in like an hour and a half. It's still, and it's free, by the way, if you have a Kindle. You can definitely get this book.
It's very easy to acquire.
Yes, it is. And you and I had a challenging time because you and I are both kind of Charles Dickens geeks, and we both really love this story. And there are dozens and dozens and dozens of adaptations of this work, or just different variations of the work. So, we were having a hard time figuring out which one to lock down. And if you join the Facebook group, you can join our polls. And I just want to read you guys. So according to y'all, the top 3 favorites that you had for A Christmas Carol, it was tied for first place, The Muppet Christmas Carol from 1992. Scrooge, which is a good one. Scrooge with Bill Murray. Mm-hmm. And then the third one is A Christmas Carol with Alistair Sims. And that might be the winner because somebody listed it twice. But people really love that version.
Yeah. That is the classic. I mean, certainly like for our generation, that's the one that was all on TV every Christmas. Yeah. And that's the one. And I think that's the one that gets visually quoted the most, probably. There's stuff in that that's not in the book, but has just become part of the canon of the Christmas Carol movie. But yeah, Charles Dickens. We'd be here all day talking about Charles Dickens. My goodness.
And we were just saying, I was asking you, like, what are your favorite versions? Like for me, I love A Diva's Christmas Carol with Vanessa Williams, which I think is wonderful. And if you guys listen to the very, very end of the show, you're going to get a little treat there. Little Vanessa Williams treat. And then I liked one that I posted on the page. It's Henry Winkler doing An American Christmas Carol, which I really loved.
That's one of the ones that I was like, I totally forgot about that. It's not bad.
No, it's not at all. And we picked, and you liked Ebby, the Susan Lucci one.
I love Ebby. Yes, Susan Lucci, who is criminally underrated.
Absolutely.
I love that one. I think it was a Lifetime holiday movie back in the day. And I was thinking as I was getting ready for the recording today of like, I don't know if this still happens because I don't watch as much television now as I did growing up. But remember, like in the 70s, certainly every single major television show did a version of A Christmas Carol.
Oh, it's the theme.
Like I remember Sanford and Son had one. The Jeffersons had one. I think Happy Days, they did a version of the Christmas Carol. It is a classic trope for the holidays, and with good reason. Good reason. It covers a lot of really important themes. and against the backdrop of Christmas. But the story itself, we should talk a little bit about the background of this. I mean, Charles Dickens, like I said, we could be here all day long. I mean,
yeah.
he was basically the poster child for rags to riches.
Absolutely. He was born in 1812.
Not an educated guy. Yeah, born in 1812.
He lived to 1870. He lived to be 58. His father is what we would say economically unbalanced. They sometimes had money. They oftentimes did not have money. His father went to debtor's prison at times. And you were just saying, he had no formal education. Dickens did not have a formal education. And there were times when he had to work, outside the home when he was like 10 or 11 years old versus going to school because his father was in prison. And he never forgot these experiences. And he was very close to his father. And by the way, his father loved Christmas. That was his favorite holiday. And he always remembered that. But yeah, he wrote 15 novels, 5 novellas, short stories. And he wrote mainly articles, like monthly and weekly articles. And
yeah, he basically ran like a couple of magazines. But even before all of that, he was a journalist. And it's just such an interesting, if you ever have time to even just watch, YouTube videos, biographies of Charles Dickens, it is quite an inspiring story. I mean, again, no education, ludicrously poor, at a time where it was literally a crime to be poor.
Right.
And self-taught genius, really. And to go from what was it that he did? He had to leave school and he got a job where he had to dye something black.
Yes.
I forget what it was, right? And which was a humiliating experience for him. And anyway, to go from that to becoming a journalist, he was a parliamentary journalist. And then to go into fiction and become, it's just amazing. Such an incredible story.
And the books and the novels that he's written, I mean, think about it. It's Oliver Twist, Nicholas Nickleby, David Copperfield, A Tale of Two Cities, and Great Expectations. Like just some of the greatest work of the 18th century. He wrote it. And then he was a great reader of his work, as we were just talking about before. He started traveling around the country and around the world reading his work. And people... And people treat him like a rock star. When he came to America, they were like lined up on the streets just to see him. And they would try to listen in through the doors outside these theaters. He was a rock star. It's incredible.
Yeah, and he was known for because he also had a flair for the theatrical. And I kind of got the impression that one of the ways he was able to advance himself was he seems to have been quite a charming and charismatic person. And but somebody who occupied every single social and economic level of Victorian England, in the 19th century. And the only sort of similar character I can think of American counterpart is Mark Twain.
That's really, and you're right. It is the 19th century. I don't know why I said the 18th century, but yes, it is. It's 19th century.
I don't know why we have that convention.
I don't know. It confuses me sometimes.
It's very confusing. Everybody makes that mistake. Yeah, he was a supernova star.
Yeah.
Everybody knew him and knew his name and knew his characters as though they were family members. And Christmas, the idea of Christmas, and specifically the Victorian Christmas, many of the traditions that we celebrate today around the world go back to Dickens, go back to the Victorian era. Like nobody had Christmas trees before Queen Victoria.
And it was kind of, the tradition had sort of died down. It got really popular and then it died down again. And here we are in the middle of the 19th century. And here he is, it's 1843, and he has a kid on the way, and he needs money. He needs to come up with an idea. And he had this idea for A Christmas Carol, and the publishers just didn't go for it. They didn't see, nobody cares about Christmas. It's not that popular anymore, blah, blah, blah. So he self-published A Christmas Carol.
Yeah.
With John Leach, who does those beautiful illustrations, and he immediately sold 6,000 copies. And
it was an instant hit. I heard I heard in one of the things that I watched that his as you said, he needed money. He needed something to write about. He had been a parliamentary journalist, so he was covering the political beat.
Mm-hmm.
And there were a lot of really messed up policies, social in particular, social and economic policies going on in Victorian Britain. Women didn't have the right to vote. Again, you could go to prison for being poor. Child labor was a horrific problem. And round about this time, the government passed oddly enough, the government passed an economic bill that would greatly line the pockets of the rich while taking away any chance of the poor to advance in the world.
What?
And yes, and he was like, "Well, this is ridiculous. I need to say something about this. People need to know how." This is going to sound weird. People need to know that trickle-down economics doesn't work, basically. And and how can I frame this in a way? He understood the power of story, because you can't just go to somebody and go, well, if you give this percent to that percent, then da, ba, ba, ba. People don't understand that. They understand human stories.
Mm-hmm.
And so he gave us these characters who some of them are in the situation because of what they've done with their lives, the choices they made, but other people, it's just the accident of their birth. And it brings up so many important and still obviously very relevant questions that we have today.
At the time, there was this idea of like, well, if you can't afford to send your kid to school, that's your problem. We need people to work, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so he would visit these they called them the ragged school movement, and it was people just creating schools, and it didn't matter if you had raggedy clothes and shoes, you can show up there and have an education. And it was just this movement of people at the time to try to educate the kids, because by golly, if you educate people and treat them with respect when they're young, they grow up to be decent human beings and hardworking, and the cycle of poverty can possibly end. But back then people think, well, if that was the way you were born, boom, that's just who you are, and your family and all that. So he, like he said, he wanted to create these characters that you could care about. And so he created Bob Cratchit, and Cratchit's family, like, this wasn't represented in literature at the time, of a very poor family that, you could relate to. And they were very hardworking.
Yeah, working class.
Yeah.
Because as you mentioned, he decided he took a great risk of self-publishing this story. And he published it. Am I remembering correctly? He wanted it published with color illustrations.
Yes.
And they just cost-wise, they couldn't make that work. So when it very first came out, only very wealthy people could afford to buy the first edition with the color illustrations. And so, here are you have to imagine these, well-to-do people. Oh, let's buy the latest, it's like, buying the latest video game console system or something, basically.
Right, entertainment.
Let's go buy the latest, hottest media because we can afford it. And yet in there is this working class family that people completely related to, no matter where they were on the economic spectrum. It is genius.
It is. And we should say, like, when it was published, it became, like you said, an immediate hit. Within 5 days, they had to go back and publish more. Within 2 months, there were 8 stage adaptations around the world. I mean, it took off everywhere. And that's just the kind of person he was. He was a hit. And then after that, he started touring the world, just doing adaptations of this work. And I have this one story. It was in 1867, Dickens was in Chicago doing a live reading. And there was a factory owner who, saw the show. And at the time, by the way, you didn't automatically have Christmas Day off. And so this person, I think they made weights, like you weigh things on a scale. And he said to his crew, his workers, not only do you get Christmas Day off, but I'm going to give you all a turkey to take home and cook. So it was very, very powerful. He was a huge rock star, like I said, when he went out reading, and he read this material like right up until he died. And then I sent you a clip that I think is pretty hilarious, but it's drunk history. And it's a show on Comedy Central, and they did. I just want to play you guys this little clip here. It's just basically talking about Charles Dickens reading to the crowd and like how that became popular. So here you go. Here it is.
And he begins to perform A Christmas Carol. Oh, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Charles Dickens. Hey. Thank you. Let me get my glasses. All right, here we go. A Christmas Carol. You mind? Anyone? All right, great. Here we go. 1, 2, and a 1, 2, 3. A Christmas Carol. One night. It's all up. Excuse my language. And begin. A Christmas Carol. I'm Charles Dickens. Suddenly, the ghost of Christmas present becomes the ghost of Christmas past. And Tiny Tim came bouncing down the lane. And he said, Father, I'm crippled. And Bob Cratchit said, no shit. What else is new? Are we still doing the show here?
Drunk History is one of my kids' favorite shows.
Phil Hendry is the reader, by the way. Sorry.
Oh, that's right. Yes. So those of you who aren't familiar with Drunk History, it's a show where the way I kind of figured that it goes is that they have a set of comedians, and each show usually has a theme, like great inventions or, journalism. And each comedian is, I gather, given like a Wikipedia entry about what they're going to talk about that they have to study. But then before the person is able to relate back to the camera what they've studied, they get them really, really super drunk. So what you're hearing is the drunk comedians version of what happened.
And it's hilarious because they get really famous actors to act out what they're doing. So the actors just sort of mouth along what the comedian is saying. So in this one, it's Colin Hanks, like being, it's very, very funny, you guys. You just got to go. I'll put it back on the Facebook page, but it was really hilarious.
Yeah, he just had a real, one of his many great gifts was his ability to show how we are as a society. When you're a society, it's something that we all do together. Everyone is in some regard responsible for everybody else. The poor worker is in some ways responsible for the squillionaire and vice versa. Mm-hmm. And I heard somebody analyzing, I watched so many Dickens because it's just such a fascinating life.
Yeah.
But somebody brought this up and I thought this is really interesting. So, because he studied politics and he not only studied it, but he lived everything that he covered politics and all of the things that people were arguing about in Parliament, he had actually experienced personally. And so although this is what the person was saying, that although he himself, he wasn't a politician, he didn't have solutions to these problems. But what he did that was so brilliant was to shine a light on the problems and to give them the human face that they needed so that ordinary people and people in power would be motivated to act and create change for the better good of everybody, which is a very special thing. And yeah, this story people just really, really resonated with, either because because they had something about their own personal experience in there, even if it was just the nostalgia of Christmas time, mm-hmm. if nothing else.
And like I said before, it was a hit, and then people started, like you said, putting up Christmas trees and having gifts and having games and songs and traditions, and it became a day off from work, and it became a day of fellowship and being with your family and friends and being appreciative of the world around you. And it was like I said, he was just remarkable. And when he was a kid, he and his father, I don't know if you saw this in one of your documentaries, but he went by this, they were going for a walk and there was this gorgeous house. And he was like, oh my God, one day I want to live there. And his father said, well, why don't you just dream about it? Maybe you will someday. And he eventually did buy the very house that he was wistfully looking at, every day on these walks. And that's where he eventually died. He was at his home there. But like he said, he was very, very poor and he was very, very wealthy. But he was always the same person no matter what.
Now, we should also, I think in fairness, mention not the greatest husband.
Oh, no.
Not a fabulous dad.
Ironically.
Although people loved him, he was just one of those people that was welcome, whatever kind of crowd he was in. People just loved to have him around. Not so much his wife and many, many children. He had, what was it, like 11 kids or
10
something?
or 11, yeah. And then he did wind up with the wife's sister, or that was the scandal?
Yeah, there was some weird thing about the wife's sister, but eventually he separated from the wife, whose name was, I think it was Catherine, separated from her and took up with this young actress.
Oh, okay.
And by all accounts, even people who absolutely adore Charles Dickens, all of his biographers and so on, by all accounts, everyone pretty much agrees that he was an absolute jerk to his wife, his first wife or only wife. She loved him dearly, and whenever she would write to him about, I don't know, there are almost a dozen kids they share together. Whenever she would have to communicate with him, she would communicate with him like very warmly. One has the impression that she never spoke ill of him to the kids, and he would always reply it was cold and perfunctory away, because they have these correspondents. They have just the coldest possible businesslike response to this woman who he fathered almost a dozen children with. And her dying wish, she asked her, one of their children, I should say, she gave them this little package she had saved of letters that he wrote to her when they were courting and he was pursuing her. She had saved the letters, and her dying wish was that they be sent to a museum so that the world would know that he didn't hate her.
Oh.
That's
the saddest thing ever.
It's so awful. Like, that was her dying wish, so that people would not, because people just assumed, well, gosh, Charles Dickens is such a fabulous guy. She must be awful that he doesn't want to speak to her or have anything to do with her.
I wonder what happened. I mean, apparently he could be really miserable too. He could be miserable to deal with as well. So
I saw lots and lots of things about it. And the only thing that people really had to say about it was that, as his world got bigger and as he gained more notoriety and became more sophisticated, she couldn't quite keep up with that, because they married, young and broke and uneducated, but she loved him, but she just couldn't keep up that, because he worked at a ridiculously superhuman pace. She just could not keep up with him, and so people think perhaps he grew to resent that. And then when he fell in love with this actress who was much younger than he was, and who he had a very long relationship with, but he was not nice to her or to the children. He barely acknowledged his children, as far as I could tell.
So his last days were pretty crazy as well. So 1865, he actually survived a train crash. And it was a lot of people died in this crash, and he survived it, and he actually got out of there and helped people, to help them and help the rescue workers. But he died a few years later of a stroke, and he was only 58 years old. But I guess at that time, that was a pretty average age to go. But he lived a hell of a life for 58 years.
Yeah, he really did. If you see. And there are photographs of him. We have a pretty good idea what he looked like. If you see him, he looks much older than somebody in his mid-50s, as he is in the photographs that we know. He looks a great deal older than that, especially nowadays that we have kombucha and vitamins and like that.
So should we talk about the basic story?
Yes.
You guys probably know this, but it's Ebenezer Scrooge. It's Christmas Eve, and he's a miserly person, and Jacob Marley was his business partner. It opens with Jacob Marley dying, and Scrooge taking over the business, and he has a nephew named Fred that he has nothing to do with. He has a sister that he loved very much who's gone. He was a bit nicer person when he was younger, but he became a very hard individual. He became obsessed with money. And that's what changed his personality. And that's all he cared about, money, money, money. And then here we are, Christmas Eve. His nephew invites him over. He says no. He calls humbug, bah humbug, doesn't believe in Christmas. And then Marley visits him in the middle of the night. He's trying to sleep. And Marley says, wearing chains, he's chained to the world. He's wearing chains for all the people he's wronged in his life. And then he tells him, you will be visited by 3 ghosts over the next 3 nights, by the way. Like the way they write it out, it seems like it's going to take forever. But
yes.
It's a ghost of Christmas past, present, and future, just like you guys see. And then he experiences all this. And then at the very end, he wakes up Christmas morning and he's so grateful it's Christmas morning that he didn't miss Christmas. And then he goes out and he had fired, by the way, Bob Cratchit. But he decides, of course, he needs Bob Cratchit. Bob Cratchit has a son named Tiny Tim. He has a few children. Bob's very, very poor. We learn Tiny Tim is very sick. We're not sure what he's sick with. They think for the time, the consensus is that he has some sort of kidney problem, and that if he were wealthy, they could have treated him very quickly and easily. But because he's a poor kid, and this is poor people in England at that time, he's just going to die, and that's just the way it's going to be. But Scrooge wakes up Christmas Day, and he decides he's going to be a better person. He reunites with Fred. He donates to charities. He says good morning and hello to everybody, goes to church. And then the next day, he gives Bob Cratchit a raise. And then he's told the very last line, which I absolutely loved, was just that he kept Christmas in his heart all year round. And that's the story. And it's really wonderful to read.
It's so funny.
Yeah.
It's so witty. And his point of view is so interesting. And, I guess it's the point of view of that you could only get from someone who has had some experience of everybody in the story. Like he's been Bob Cratchit, he's been Tiny Tim, and he's been Ebenezer Scrooge. And so he just has this way of presenting everybody with this like little bit of humor. Everybody has their, the Dickensian first name and last name that reveals a little bit about their character. Like I really love the well, there's a lot more. One thing that you hardly see in any of the film adaptations is the whole storyline. One about his sister.
Yep.
That relationship, and also the relationship with his what do we want to call her? Love interest, his girlfriend, the love of his life, Belle. He has this romance with this when he's poor, very much like Charles Dickens did with his wife. She finally breaks they were engaged to be married. She finally breaks it off because he's become so money hungry. And there is this scene is it Christmas, either Christmas Present or Christmas Future. There's this scene where he sees her and she's married to somebody else, and
Yep.
she has this big family and she's so happy. And her husband says, "Oh, you never guess who I saw on the street today? Your old boyfriend, haha, Ebenezer Scrooge." She was like, "Oh, you," and like it's just it's so lovely. And I also love the Christmas past, one of his first jobs when he works for like a printer or something, Mr. Fezziwig.
Yes, Fezziwig. I
And,
love Fezziwig.
And that's a great scene. So it's Christmas, and like as you said, people worked on Christmas
Yep.
in those days. And his boss, although is not like a super wealthy guy, he's like a middle class guy with a business. And he comes in and he goes, "You know what, you guys, it's Christmas. Let's stop working. Let's party down. I'm going to throw you guys some dinner before you all head out of here. Let's dance. Let's relax." And there's this just wonderful scene of this man's generosity and compassion and treating his workers who were super poor, who lived there in the shop, treating them as equals on this day.
It's one of my favorites too, and the version of the Christmas Carol that I love the most personally, we haven't mentioned yet, is the one with Patrick Stewart. I mean, he reads
Yeah.
every year. You could find him reading someplace the story But the movie was a TNT production. It was from 1999 and has great people in there. But as we said last time, like they don't have a decent version that we can stream. You have to actually buy it. But they do go into that backstory of the sister and the girlfriend. And yeah, it breaks his heart when he realizes, like, who was that stupid young man that let her go? Because she was amazing. And it's incredible. He has a lot of losses.
So the version that we decided to do was a version neither one of us, I don't think either one of us had seen it, had we?
No, neither one of us had it. That's actually was a hole in my Christmas Carol pocket or whatever. I'd seen all of them. You saw, I kept posting on the site. These are all the ones that are out there. And I don't know why I didn't see it before. It's from 2009. It's not stop motion, but it's a strange kind of animation. And they also, what's the one with Tom Hanks and the train? The Polar Express.
Like Polar Express. Yeah.
Yeah, it's that same thing where they put dots all over the actors' faces and then they animate, and then so they get the actors, like, it's supposed to look super expressive, and it was supposed to be super, super close to the material. So I thought, and it's easy for you to stream, and get. So I was like, well, why don't we just go for that one? And so, Margot, should we just play that trailer right now just for that version?
Yes, let's do the trailer.
Okay.
What do you want with me?
You will be haunted by 3 spirits. I'd rather not. I am the ghost of Christmas past.
Haunt me no longer!
What if you were given a second chance to get your life right? This holiday season, the ghosts of Christmas past, present, and future
Get away! Get away!
will give one man that chance. This November, Walt Disney Pictures and Image Movers Digital invite you to experience the classic tale like you've never seen it before in Disney Digital 3D and IMAX 3D.
Humbug.
Yes, A Christmas Carol, Robert Zemeckis. We talked about him in our Forrest Gump episode, and he also directed one of my favorite movies of all time, Back to the Future. I never get tired of that. And this is another Jim Carrey production. We talked about him for The Grinch Who Stole Christmas. And Margot, Jim plays, I'll read it to you, Scrooge, Ghost of Christmas Past, Ghost of Scrooge as a young boy, Scrooge as a teenage boy, Scrooge as a young man, Scrooge as a middle-aged man, Ghost of Christmas Present, and the Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come. So he is all over this movie.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's a lot of roles.
Yes.
And we'll get into that in a second. But then also Gary, it's like the Jim Carrey Gary Oldman show. Mm-hmm. So because Gary Oldman plays a bunch of roles too.
He plays Tiny Tim and Marley, and he plays Bob Cratchit. And I love this is because in the original material, Bob Cratchit's not a tall man. For some reason, Bob Cratchit has to be small. But in all the other movies and stuff, they make him kind of a tall guy with a Tiny Tim. But in the movie, they make Gary Oldman very short to play Bob Cratchit, which is kind of fun to watch.
It is. It's neat. He's shorter than his wife. He's shorter than his daughters. Yeah. So I don't know where to start with this thing. We'll say the one thing is it true to the book? It is pretty faithful to the book.
Yes.
Yes, it is. Robert Zemeckis is a pretty good director. Mm-hmm. You know, he's no slouch. Just on the whole, I thought that all the roles that Jim Carrey did and all of the roles that Gary Oldman did, I thought they did a really super job with everything. I love both of them as actors. I think they're both fantastic. For me, the biggest obstacle was the animation. It was just so weird. I couldn't get past it.
You know, it's
It
weird.
really got in the way.
It got in the way. You know, it's so funny because they do the stop motion, so it's supposed to make the faces look livelier than in a regular animation. I feel like it makes them look deader, like their eyes look
Yes.
dead. I mean, they have Robin Wright's in here as the girlfriend, as Fran and Belle. She plays both of them, Fan and Belle, excuse me. And we talked about her in our Princess Bride episode, and she's just one of the most beautiful, expressive women, you know, acting out there. And I couldn't tell, I couldn't pick her apart from anybody. She just looks like a Barbie doll.
No. Yeah. I didn't get it. And I couldn't help but thinking, like, dude, you have Jim Carrey, you have Gary Oldman, you have Robin Wright, like they had great, amazing, super skilled dream team actors. You could have done this live action.
Yeah.
Why didn't you just do it live action? It would have been phenomenal. They totally could have done it live action. Jim Carrey does such a I love the ghosts, because he does the ghosts as well as doing Scrooge, and the ghosts are given different accents. Like this poor guy, I can't even imagine how much work it must have been to do the accents, because he has to do a British accent for Ebenezer Scrooge. The Ghost of Christmas Past has this eerie, like Irish accent. The Ghost of Christmas Present has sort of like a Scottish-y, I couldn't quite place it, Scottish Welsh kind of, but different. And then Gary Oldman is all the different characters that he plays has to sound like all these different people, sometimes in the same scene. Why did you not do this live action, Robert Zemeckis, is what I keep thinking when I'm watching this movie.
I don't know if they just really liked the Polar Express and they thought that was, because I think that came first. And
I think it did.
I think it did. And I think like he was like, well, this was a big success. Why don't we? And I don't know why they felt like realizing the material, they couldn't do it live action, that they had to do it animated, but they didn't want to do regular boring animation. So let's do this kind of animation. And it just doesn't work. I mean, I wish, and you know, I love the scene, and Fezziwig, going back to him. So I love this scene. I'll play this clip. It's very quick, but it's Bob Hoskins. You know, you remember him from our Hook episode. You know, here he is, and it's like you said, he's like greeting Ebenezer and as a young man with his friend, and hey, let's have a party. You know.
Do you know this place?
Know it! I was an apprentice here. Why, it's old Fezziwig. Bless his heart, it's Fezziwig alive again!
Yo! Ebenezer, come on! Hey, come on! Yes, come on! 6 o'clock. We're going to be here soon.
Dick Wilkinson. Bless me, yes, there he is, Dick Wilkinson. He was very attached to me, was Dick.
Yes, home, lads! No more work tonight. It's Christmas Eve. Dick, Ebenezer, let's get cleared away. We want lots of space. Lots and lots of space.
It's great, and I love Bob Hoskins, but even his face just doesn't look like him.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know what it is. It's like they're dead in the eyes, and that really, but also I was trying to pull some more clips for you, but I was like, I would pull one and then I try to listen to it later. It's just a lot of, it's just crashing and moving around, and it's all super frenetic, and then it's quiet, and then it's super frenetic again. And it was just, I don't know why that didn't work for me. I just felt it was like a little over the top. The energy was just a little over the top for me.
Yeah, it's just not balanced. And I just got more and more frustrated because I could see like these performances were so good. Bob Hoskins is like giving you everything as Fezziwig. Like it's so good, and like, dang it, you're killing me with this animation.
Did you see any of the behind the scenes stuff?
I did a little bit.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so did I.
Wouldn't you rather have just had that? Why couldn't we just have that?
I mean, I swear to you, there's a scene where like Jim Carrey is like holding on to the end of the bed pole at the end, and so they showed him in the studio, and he has all that stuff all over his face, to catch all of his reactions, and he's like jumping up and down and stuff like that. He did that for hours. And it's fun to watch him do it, but then you see the end product, and I don't know why it doesn't work, because people put a lot of time, a lot of money into this. Like, this is not a slapdash production. I mean, they really...
No.
It's Disney, by the way, we should say. I think this is Jim Carrey's only Disney flick. But I think so. But I don't know why it ultimately doesn't work. And I wasn't ultimately at the very, very end, when normally my heart just soars when he says, please take me and an old man, please have, let me have dinner with you. It's just not there. And I don't know why. And I just...
Oh, and by the way, Colin Firth.
He's from a Bridget Jones episode. He plays Fred.
It's again, like, these performances are outstanding. They truly are. But the animation just really is it's like trying to watch a fantastic Broadway show from behind a fence.
Yeah, or through a gauze curtain or something. It's just like missing just some of the little details. And they like we said, it's very faithful. I like the stuff that they kept in there. It was fun to see, but I think Jim Carrey could have easily have been a live action version of this. But with the kind of technology we have, especially nowadays that we have, I think he'd be fantastic. But I'm sure he's not going to do this again.
No,
I'm sure.
But but all the this didn't cost nothing.
No.
Like, obviously they spent a great deal of money doing all this animation. They could easily have done computer generated, for the same budget, computer generated Dickensian London, and given us live action Jim Carrey and Colin Firth and Gary Oldman. You could have done Bob Hoskins. Man.
Yeah, it's a missed opportunity.
It really is.
Yeah, it's so I don't know. I mean, book versus movie. I mean, book.
I mean, it's no contest, and it's a shame. It was a real shame because, as you said, the script is good.
Yeah.
It is a really good script, and the pacing of it is great. It's just the animation that makes it, just weighs it down completely, just completely keeps it from taking off.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, and it should have been a tie, but it's not. It's an easy book.
Yeah, it's a book. So what is your favorite? Is it still Ebby? What's your favorite version?
I do really like the Patrick Stewart one, and I have to go with the Alistair. What was the third one that people chose? Alistair Sim. Yes.
Yeah.
Is that his name?
Yeah.
That's his name, right?
That's his name. Yeah. And it's
that one.
They had an interesting one that we showed.
That's the one I remember growing up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They had an interesting one.
That's the one when I was a kid. I remember being like, oh, so nervous for him. Like, it's going to be your name on the tombstone, dude. Don't look. Yeah.
Did you look at the one that's the cartoon version that features him? That's on. That's.
I have seen that. Yes.
It's interesting. It's Chuck Jones, who also did Grinch Who Stole Christmas. And it has Alistair Sims. It's very good. It gets a demerit point from me because with the part where Scrooge, where they're supposed to be celebrating that he's dead. These old bankers are supposed to be really happy that he's dead, and they're trying to make a Jewish bankers, like they have huge hook noses. It's really gross. Yeah. So I can't recommend that one. My sister's is, I have to say this because she's going to listen. She's going to be really mad if I don't mention it. Mr. Magoo. That's my sister's absolute favorite.
Oh, Mr. Magoo. I remember Mr. Magoo's Christmas Carol.
Great
songs.
Like
I said, when we were kids, everybody did Christmas Carol.
Yeah.
I don't know why. It was a thing in the 70s.
70s and 80s, because I remember it was the Family Ties. I think like Alex Keaton had the same thing one season.
Even It's a Wonderful Life is really but sort of twisted on its head. It comes from that tradition of A Christmas Carol.
Well, it's the redemption at Christmas time. Yeah. So that's I don't know, you guys. I mean, I would say like. I wouldn't pay to rent it. If it just shows up for free, check it out. But it's not a must see.
I know, and I thought, it's animated. Maybe my kids might want to watch it. I was like, my kids aren't going to want to see this.
No, I think.
And even like when they walk by, they were like, "What is that? It looks weird." I know it does look weird. I'm sorry, it looks weird because these guys are acting their asses off. Yeah,
they're doing their best, but yeah.
Wah, wah. So what are we doing next in the new year?
Yeah, so I think we should replay, the Anti-Mame for just in time for New Year's Eve. We can do Yes. So then after that, do we want to start? We've been promising this forever. Do we want to start with Cider House Rules?
I think we are so long overdue for Cider House. rules. We should probably finally buckle down and do Cider House Rules.
I'm flying cross country on Monday, so I'm going to bring my Kindle with me, and so I'm going to definitely read it. And I haven't seen that movie in years, and I remember really loving it. So I'm excited. So this is great. I'm excited. We're going to do this.
I don't think I ever did see that movie. I've read the book.
Yeah, Michael Caine.
With Michael Caine, I don't think I ever saw it. Is Tobey Maguire in it?
Yes.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember when it came out. I don't think I ever got to see it, but I have read it before, so I'm looking forward to. I love John Irving, so I'm looking forward to reading it again. It'll be good.
It'll be fun to look up John Irving again and talk about him.
That's another great, fascinating writer. Great. So, fa la 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 la, everybody. Where can people find us on the internet?
So looking for Book versus Movie, if you're looking for the show, wherever you get your podcasts, type in Book vs. Movie Podcast. Be sure to subscribe. That way you'll never miss an episode. And for all the Apple Podcast reviews, if you leave a 5-star review for us, we'll read it on the air. And on social media, mainly Facebook and Twitter, it's at Book versus a Movie. Spell them all out. Please join our Book versus Movie group on Facebook. Just look that up, Book vs. Movie Podcast group, and we will let you come on in. And we have an email. If you want to send us some comments or suggestions, send it via email at bookversusmoviepodcast@gmail.com. And Margot, where can they find you?
You can find me online at thechingonahomesteader.com, and all of my social media is at She's Not Your Mama. My other podcasts are Did I Just Eat That Out Loud and Resisting Bitch Face. And where can they find you?
You can find me at Brooklyn Fit Chick on all social media, and that's also my blog, and you can find out all the stuff I'm working on in addition to Book versus Movie. I also co-host the Fit Bottom Girls podcast, the Not Fade Away podcast, and the Best Neighbors podcast. And thank you guys so much once again, another year doing this show. It's just so much fun, and I just want to wish you all Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. Thank you for being around with us. We love doing this.
Thanks so much, and we will talk to you in the new year with Cider House Rules.
Scrooge was better than his word. He did it all and infinitely more. And to Tiny Tim, who did not die, he was a second father. He became as good a friend, as good a master, and as good a man as the good old city knew, or any other good old city, town, or borough in the good old world. Some people laughed to see the alteration in him, but he let them laugh and little heeded them, for he was wise enough to know that nothing ever happened on this globe for good, at which some people did not have their fill of laughter in the outset. And knowing that such as these would be blind anyway, he thought it quite as well that they should wrinkle up their eyes in grins as have the malady in less attractive forms. His own heart laughed, and that was quite enough for him. It was always said of him that he knew how to keep Christmas well, if any man alive possessed the knowledge. May that be truly said of us, and all of us. And so, as Tiny Tim observed, God bless us, everyone.
Thank you so much for listening to the Book versus Movie podcast. We are a part of the Electronic Media Collective. We follow the hashtags Podern Family and Lady Pod Squad, and we record all of our shows on the Zoom Handy H4n, donated to us by our friend Nick at the Dependent Independent Podcast.
We're gliding along with the song of a wintry fairyland. Y'all want to see an old friend? 'Cause when you sing old songs, it's good to have old friends around. Ladies and gentlemen, Miss Terry Freeman! Our cheeks are nice and cozy and comfy, cozy are we. We're snuggled up together like two birds of a feather would be. Let's take that road before us and sing a chorus or two. Come on, it's lovely weather for a sleigh ride together with you. Giddy up, let's go. Let's look at the snow. Feel the